Now, in your opinion, what you're advocating for, would that decrease the strength of our military or just the numbers of our military? Explain that to me a little bit.
Well, I want to cut the size of the United States military. I think we have too many wars, and I think we defend too many allies who can afford to defend themselves. So in that sense, yeah, it would decrease the strength of our military, but I think it would also keep us out of needless trouble, and it would keep more money in the reserves or in the pockets of taxpayers ultimately, and thus it would make us stronger and safer as a nation in the long term, in my opinion.
One of the tenets of our military is and always has been that speak softly and carry a big stick, that it is a deterrent. The size and strength of our military is the surest guarantee of peace in our nation, in our world. Would not cutting back the numbers, the strength and breadth of our military not end the deterrence factor and other nations wouldn't fear our strength as much?
Well, you have to talk more specifically about who you want to deter. I mean, we're still going to have easily the biggest military in the world. A military that's many times the size of China's, which is the next biggest military after this. We're still going to have 40% of the world's military spending. So we certainly have a big stick. I don't think we do a lot of speaking softly, frankly, but there's still going to be a pretty big stick. Whether or not one agrees, I don't really totally agree, but whether or not one agrees that we're actually out there keeping peace in every corner of the world by having garrisons and so forth.
All right, well, let's talk about ISIS for a second. If you think that we're fighting wars that we don't belong in, what do you think America's role in defeating ISIS here and globally should be?
Well, there's no war to defeat ISIS in the United States, of course. It's a domestic policing problem primarily. The war against ISIS is in Syria and Iraq. I'm in favor of working with allies and even working with Assad to go after ISIS. I think the problem really with what we're doing, particularly in Syria, is the fantasy that there's going to be a liberal third option between ISIS and some sort of deal with the Assad regime. I think we got to get out of the business of trying to overthrow the Assad regime and focus on ISIS, working with the Russians, working with Assad if need be to defeat ISIS. I think that would be more realistic. And I think, you know, it's not a question of money. The money for the wars is there. It's, in fact, they're sort of overfunded because we're using them to fund the base.
Sure, but ISIS isn't fighting a traditional war. They're not in the trenches like we were in World War II. They use guerrilla warfare, and they have used that in our own backyard. There have been stabbings, there have been beheadings, there have been killings done by radical jihadist terrorists here in our country. It is a threat to our nation here, and we can't just wait for them to attack here and then let our police forces handle that. We have to go to where the problem is to deter them from doing it again, to take them out before they attack us, not just allow them to attack us and then in retaliation get them back. And you don't think that cutting down military actions overseas prevents that?
I just said that I support doing things, having a war to attack ISIS. So in what way, shape, or form am I saying we should wait for them to attack us? I don't know what you're suggesting in terms of what we ought to be doing in the United States to defeat ISIS. Do you want to send brigades of the army against, you know, these domestic ISIS sympathizers in the United States? There's not been an ISIS plot in the United States. There's been people who are sort of self-radicalized and self-motivated who are maybe inspired by ISIS. So the idea that we need to sort of have a global war against ISIS is badly confused. They're headquartered in Syria and Iraq, and to the extent we need to go after them, that's the place. The groups in Libya and Afghanistan that say they're with ISIS are really primarily separate groups that just use the same tagline, the same brand.
Yeah, I'm suggesting that America take leadership in this, that we don't wait for coalition forces, that we recognize the problem for what it is, that it's a threat against our nation, that they think that we in America are the most evil country on earth, that they have threatened not only from their headquarters, but in the inspiration that they give to these homegrown terrorists to take us out, that the homegrown terrorists are detrimental to our nation. That is going to be how they attack us, whether it's attacks like 9/11, whether it's attacks like Paris, whether it's the minor attacks of one Islamic terrorist beheading someone else or shooting someone else here in our country. And I don't think that we can sit here, not take leadership, and do what President Obama has advocated and say that his strategy is working, that ISIS is contained. I think we need to go out and get these people. And yeah, that involves going out and attacking them globally and going out around the world to where they are, where their inspiration comes, where their money is, where their strongholds are, and getting them militarily. And in my opinion, I don't think we can do that without a strong military, without increased defense spending, and we certainly can't do that by cutting back on the breadth and strength of our military. That's what I'm suggesting.